She was the most photographed woman in the world. Millions adored her. Presidents desired her. Hollywood studios built their entire empires around her face. The whole world called her a queen. Everywhere she went, cameras flashed, crowds gathered, men lost their breath, women studied her every move. She was Marilyn Monroe, and to the world, she had everything. But behind every photograph, behind every red carpet smile, behind every glittering performance, was a woman who cried herself to sleep almost every single night of her life. A woman who once said, and these words will stay with you, "I've never fooled anyone. I've let people fool themselves. They didn't bother to find out who and what I was. Instead, they would invent a character for me. I wouldn't argue with them." This is the real story of Marilyn Monroe. Not the legend, not the icon, not the character the world invented, the woman. And once you truly understand what she lived through, you will never look at that famous smile the same way again. Her real name was Norma Jean Mortensen, born on June 1st, 1926, in Los Angeles, California. From the very first day of her life, the world made it clear she was not wanted. She never knew her father. His name was never even placed on her birth certificate. Her mother, Gladys Baker, was a film negative cutter at a Hollywood studio, a fragile woman who suffered from severe paranoid schizophrenia. Gladys loved her daughter, but she was simply too ill to care for her. By the time Norma Jean was just 7 years old, her mother had a complete mental breakdown and was placed in a psychiatric institution. Just like that, a little girl lost the only parent she had ever known. What followed were years that would break most people. Foster, home after foster home. Some of the families were kind, others were not. There were homes where she was treated as a servant, homes where she was ignored, homes where worse things happened, things she would only speak about in fragments, in whispers, years later. At one point, she was placed in the Los Angeles orphans' home, even though her mother was still alive. She could never make sense of that. How could she be an orphan when her mother still existed in the world? It was a question that haunted her entire life. She later described those years with heartbreaking simplicity. She said she always felt that she did not belong anywhere, that she was always on the outside of life, looking in through a window at a warmth she could never quite reach. At age 16, a family she was living with told her they could no longer keep her. Her only options were to go back to the orphanage or to get married. So she married her neighbor's son, a young man named Jim Doherty. She didn't marry for love. She married to survive. She was 16 years old. Think about that. 16. No mother. No father. No real home. Already making impossible decisions just to keep herself safe in the world. And this was before anyone had ever heard the name Marilyn Monroe. When her husband Jim was deployed overseas during World War II, Norma Jean went to work at a munitions factory to support herself. It was hard, unglamorous work, but it was there, on that factory floor, that everything in her life suddenly changed. An Army photographer named David Conover arrived at the factory to take pictures of women contributing to the war effort. He spotted Norma Jean immediately. He said later that the camera loved her in a way he had never seen before. She had a quality that was almost impossible to explain, but completely impossible to ignore. Her face began appearing in magazines, then on billboards. Modeling agencies came calling. Hollywood studios took notice. She signed with 20th Century Fox, dyed her hair blonde, and was given a new name by her studio, Marilyn Monroe. And here is something most people never knew about Marilyn Monroe. She worked harder than almost anyone in Hollywood. She arrived early. She stayed late. She studied acting with obsessive dedication. She read constantly, Dostoevsky, Chekhov, Whitman. She wanted desperately to be taken seriously as an actress, as an artist, as an intelligent woman. She even started her own production company, Marilyn Monroe Productions, at a time when almost no actress in Hollywood had ever done such a thing. She fought the studios for creative control. She fought for better roles. She fought to be seen as more than just a pretty face. But Hollywood only ever wanted one thing from Marilyn Monroe, and it was not her mind. By the early 1950s, she was the biggest movie star on the planet. Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, How to Marry a Millionaire, Bus Stop, The 7-Year Itch, movie after movie, hit after hit. Every film she appeared in turned to gold. The more famous she became, the more she felt like a prisoner inside her own fame.
By 1962, Marilyn Monroe was 36 years old. To look at her, she was still breathtaking. Her final photo shoot, taken just weeks before her death, shows a woman who was somehow more beautiful than ever. But beauty, as Marilyn knew better than anyone, can hide almost anything. She was filming Something's Got to Give for 20th Century Fox, but she was struggling. The anxiety, the insomnia, the medication, it was all catching up with her. She missed days on set. She arrived hours late. She forgot her lines. The studio, with all its patience long exhausted, fired her. The termination made front pages worldwide. But in those same weeks, there were also moments of brightness. Friends who saw her during that period say she seemed to be fighting. She was trying to get better. She was speaking to her psychiatrist regularly. She was making plans for the future. She spoke about wanting to rebuild her career, to find new projects, to start again. On the evening of August 4th, 1962, a Saturday night, Marilyn Monroe spoke on the phone with several friends. Those who spoke to her said she sounded calm. Tired, but calm. The next morning, August 5th, her housekeeper became concerned when Marilyn's bedroom door remained locked through the morning. She called Marilyn's psychiatrist. He arrived, looked through the window, and saw her lying motionless on the bed. Marilyn Monroe was pronounced dead at 4:25 in the morning. She was 36 years old. The cause of death, acute barbiturate poisoning. Whether it was an accident, whether it was intentional, or whether something more sinister was involved, has never been definitively answered. The questions, the theories, the investigations, they continue to this day. The world woke up that Sunday morning to news that felt impossible. Marilyn Monroe was gone. Flags were lowered. Streets fell quiet. Even those who had never met her felt the loss in a way they could not explain. Joe DiMaggio, her second husband, the man who had loved her perhaps more fiercely than anyone, arranged her funeral. He placed red roses on her coffin 3 times a week for the next 20 years. Every week. For 20 years. Until the day he himself died. His last words, reportedly, were, "I'll finally get to see my Marilyn again. More than 6 decades have passed since that August morning." And yet, Marilyn Monroe's face is still everywhere. On posters and paintings. In museums and movies. On the walls of people who weren't even born when she was alive. Why does she endure like no one else? Perhaps because in her story, in all its beauty and all its pain, we see something deeply human. The longing to be truly loved. The fear of never being enough. The exhaustion of performing happiness when your heart is breaking. She was not just an actress. She was not just a symbol. She was a human being who deserved far more than the world gave her. A little girl who was abandoned, who rebuilt herself from nothing, who gave the world her light, even as the world slowly dimmed her own. She once said something that I want to leave you with today. She said, "I am not interested in money. I just want to be wonderful." Marilyn Monroe. She was wonderful. She was so much more than wonderful. And the world, the whole beautiful, careless, adoring world, never quite deserved her dot. If this story moved you, give it a like. It only takes a second and it means everything to this channel. And I want to know, tell me in the comments below, which part of Marilyn's story hit you the hardest? Was it the childhood? The marriages? The way Hollywood treated her? Let me know. Because behind every icon, there is always a person. And some people deserve to finally be truly seen.